Ferndale Children's Park had once been a place of laughter. Now it was a graveyard of rusted metal and splintered wood. The swings hung limp, their chains groaning in the wind. The slide, once bright yellow, was now a skeletal structure of peeling paint and jagged edges. The merry-go-round sat frozen in time, its once vibrant colors faded into a sickly gray. No child had played here in over 20 years, not since the disappearances. Emma Carter had heard the stories, of course. Every kid in town knew the legend of Ferndale Park, how the swings moved on their own, how laughter echoed from empty benches, how children who wandered in after dark were never seen again. But Emma didn't believe in ghosts, at least not until tonight. It started as a joke. Emma and her friends, Jake, Sarah, and Tyler, had been hanging out at the old train tracks, passing around a bottle of cheap vodka they'd stolen from Jake's older brother. The conversation had turned to local horror stories, as it always did when teenagers had nothing better to do. "I bet you wouldn't last 5 minutes in Ferndale Park at night," Jake said, smirking at Emma. She rolled her eyes. "It's just a creepy old playground." Sarah leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "My cousin went there last year. He said the swings were moving by themselves and he heard something whispering his name." Tyler scoffed. "Bullshit." Emma took a swig from the bottle, the alcohol burning her throat. "I'll do it." Her friends fell silent. "I'll go to Ferndale Park right now," she said, "and stay for an hour. And when I come back, you'll all owe me $20. Jake grinned. "Deal." The park was worse up close. The iron gate hung crooked, half rotted off its hinges. Emma pushed it open, the rusted metal screeching in protest. The sound sent a chill down her spine, but she forced herself forward. It's just an old park. Nothing scary about that. The moonlight cast long, twisted shadows across the cracked pavement. The swings swayed slightly in the breeze, their chains creaking like old bones. Emma pulled out her phone, turning on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating patches of overgrown grass and broken glass. Then, she heard it. A soft creak. She whipped around. One of the swings was moving, not just swaying, pumping, like a child was kicking their legs to go higher. Emma's breath caught in her throat. No, the wind. It's just the wind. But the air was dead still. She took a step closer, her phone trembling in her hand. The swing slowed, then stopped. Emma let out a shaky breath. Then, "Push me." The voice was small, high-pitched, a child's voice, but there was something wrong with it, something hollow. Emma's blood turned to ice. At the far end of the swing set, a shadowy figure sat motionless. It was small, like a kid, but its features were blurred, as if someone had smudged it out of reality. Her phone's flashlight flickered. The figure turned its head. "Push me." Emma stumbled back, her heart hammering. Then behind her, giggling, not from one child, from dozens. She ran. Her sneakers pounded against the cracked pavement as laughter echoed around her. The sound wasn't playful, it was hungry. Emma's phone slipped from her grip, clattering to the ground. She didn't stop to pick it up. The park gate was just ahead. Then something grabbed her ankle. She screamed, crashing onto the pavement. Pain shot up her leg as she twisted onto her back. A small skeletal hand was wrapped around her ankle, its fingers digging into her skin. It was emerging from the ground, as if something was pulling itself out of the earth. Emma kicked, her sneaker connecting with something brittle. The hand shattered like dry twigs, but more were bursting from the dirt. Tiny, grasping fingers, reaching for her. She scrambled to her feet, sprinting for the gate, only to skid to a stop. The rusted slide loomed in front of her. At the top, a small figure crouched, its head tilted. "Come play." Emma turned to run the other way, but the children were everywhere. Dozens of them, their forms flickering like static, their mouths stretched too wide. They surrounded her, their laughter rising into a deafening shriek. Hands grabbed her arms, her legs, her hair, dragging her toward the slide. Emma screamed, thrashing, but their grip was iron. The last thing she saw was the slide's dark, gaping mouth and the grinning face of the child at the top. Then, darkness. Jake, Sarah, and Tyler waited for 2 hours before calling the police. Emma's phone was found in the grass, still recording. The video showed her running, screaming, before unseen hands yanked her toward the slide. The screen went black just as something whispered, "We caught you." The police searched the park for days. They found nothing. But sometimes when the wind is just right, the swings still move. And if you listen closely, you can hear laughter. Emma's laughter, still playing, forever. Hollowbrook Park had always been a place of uneasy whispers. Parents warned their children not to play in the sandbox. They said the sand was dirty, that something was wrong with it. But they never explained why. The truth was buried deeper than any child could dig. 6-year-old Lucas Mercer didn't care about warnings. He was a curious boy, always poking at things he shouldn't: rotting logs, dead birds, the loose floorboard in his closet that led to the dark crawl space beneath the house. So when his mother Diane took him to Hollowbrook Park one crisp autumn afternoon, his eyes immediately locked onto the sandbox. It sat in the center of the playground, a perfect square of pale, grainy sand. No footprints, no toys, just smooth, untouched sand, as if no one had ever played in it before. "Don't go near that," Diane said, gripping his shoulder. "Why not?" Lucas whined. She hesitated. "It's not safe." Lucas pouted but nodded. For now. Diane turned away for 1 minute. Just one. She was texting her sister, arguing about Thanksgiving plans, when Lucas slipped from her side. By the time she looked up, he was already crouched in the sandbox, digging with both hands. "Lucas!" she snapped, rushing over. He didn't look up. His fingers clawed at the sand, flinging it behind him in frantic bursts. "Mommy," he whispered. "There's something in here." Diane's stomach dropped. She grabbed his arm, and then she saw it. A tiny skeletal hand, fingers curled like a dead spider, half buried in the sand. Lucas screamed. The sand shifted. Diane yanked Lucas back, but the sandbox wasn't letting go. The skeletal hand twitched. Then another burst from the sand beside it. Then another, dozens of them erupting like pale worms, fingers grasping at the air. Lucas shrieked as one latched onto his ankle. Diane pulled harder, her son's sneakers slipping in the sand. The tiny hand held on, its grip impossibly strong. More hands shot up, grabbing at Lucas's legs, his arms, his shirt. They were pulling him under. "Let go of him!" Diane screamed, clawing at the fingers. They snapped like dried twigs, but more took their place. Lucas's terrified eyes met hers. "Mommy!" Then the sand swallowed him whole. The police arrived within minutes. Diane was hysterical, her hands raw from digging. She'd plunged them into the sand up to her elbows, screaming Lucas's name, but the sandbox was shallow. No more than 2 feet deep. There was no way he could have disappeared. And yet, Officer Reyes, a grim-faced man in his 40s, ordered the sandbox excavated. The other parents watched in horrified silence as shovels bit into the sand. No Lucas, no bones, no anything. Just sand. Endless, undisturbed sand. Then, near the bottom, Reyes's shovel struck something. A small plastic toy car, the same one Lucas had been playing with that morning. Diane collapsed, sobbing. The police left by nightfall. Diane refused to go. She sat cross-legged beside the sandbox, her fingers buried in the grains, whispering her son's name like a prayer. A neighbor, Mrs. Langley, approached hesitantly. "You should go home," she said softly. Diane didn't look up. "He's in there." Mrs. Langley hesitated. Then in a voice barely above a whisper, "I know." Diane's head snapped up. Mrs. Langley's eyes were distant. "My nephew. He vanished here in '98. They dug up the whole park. Never found a trace." She swallowed. "But sometimes, at night, I hear children laughing in the sandbox." Diane's breath hitched. Miss Langley placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. "They're still in there. All of them." Diane returned the next night with a shovel. The park was empty, the moon a pale eye overhead. The sandbox glowed faintly, the grains shimmering like powdered bone. She didn't bother digging. Instead, she knelt at the edge and pressed her palms into the sand. "Take me instead," she whispered. "Give him back." The sand was warm, a slow, rhythmic pulsing, like a heartbeat. Then, A hand burst from the sand and grabbed her wrist. Not a child's hand. Lucas's hand. His fingers were cold, his skin gray, but his voice, when he spoke, was unmistakable. "Mommy," he whispered, "come play with us." Diane didn't hesitate. She let him pull her under. The next morning, the sandbox was perfectly smooth. No footprints, no sign of Diane. Just a single toy car sitting in the center. And if you press your ear to the sand on quiet nights, you can hear them. The children, laughing, waiting for the next playmate. Blackwood Playground had been closed since Halloween night, 1997. The official report said 8-year-old Tommy O'Shea had gone missing during a neighborhood party. Witnesses claimed they saw him climb the tall blue slide, heard his gleeful shout as he reached the top, then silence. When they looked again, he was gone. No footprints leading away, no signs of struggle, just an empty slide. The playground was fenced off the next day. Over the years, the metal bars rusted, the swings froze in place, and the slide's cheerful blue paint peeled away to reveal rotting wood beneath. But despite the decay, one thing remained constant. On quiet nights, children's laughter still echoed from the slide. $50 says you won't last 5 minutes in Blackwood after dark. Mark Reyes rolled his eyes at his friend Derek's taunt. The group, Mark, Derek, Priya, and Cole, had been drinking in the old train yard when the conversation turned, as it always did, to Blackwood's infamous playground. "Please," Mark said, wiping beer from his lips. "It's a rotting pile of wood. The only scary thing there is tetanus." Priya leaned forward, her dark eyes glinting in the firelight. "My sister went there last year. She said when she touched the slide, something touched her back." Cole snorted, "Bullshit." Derek grinned. "Prove it. Go tonight, film the whole thing. If you stay until midnight, I'll give you $50. Mark glanced at his phone. 10:47 p.m. "Easy money," he said, standing. The playground looked smaller in person. Mark hopped the rusted fence, his sneakers crunching on dead leaves. The air smelled of wet earth and something faintly metallic. He turned on his phone's flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. The slide loomed ahead, its once bright surface now a skeletal framework of splintered wood. Mark approached slowly, camera rolling. "Here we are, ladies and germs," he narrated, forcing bravado into his voice. "The infamous Blackwood death slide. Will I vanish into the void? Let's find out." A giggle cut him off. High-pitched, close. Mark spun, the light sweeping across empty swings. "Hello?" Silence. Then, creak. The sound came from the slide. Mark's breath hitched as he turned the camera upward. At the top, a small figure sat silhouetted against the moon. "Nice costume, asshole," Mark called, his voice steadier than he felt. The figure tilted its head. Then, in a voice that was wrong, too hollow, too old, it said, "Watch this," and slid down. Mark's camera caught every frame in perfect, horrifying detail. The boy, dressed in outdated 90s clothing, descending normally at first. Then halfway down, his form distorted, stretching like taffy before snapping back. By the time he should have hit the bottom, he was simply gone. The playground fell dead silent. Mark's hands shook so badly he nearly dropped his phone. Then from directly behind him, "Your turn." He ran. The fence seemed miles away. His lungs burned. Behind him, the slide creaked again, something heavy climbing back up. Mark vaulted the fence, not stopping until he collapsed on the sidewalk 3 blocks away. They gathered at Priya's house to review the recording. The group watched in stunned silence as the part appeared, slid, and vanished. But when Mark paused at the final frame, Cole pointed to the bottom corner of the screen. "What the hell is that?" Zoomed in, the blur resolved into a face. The boy, now inches from the camera lens, his grin stretching ear to ear. Priya screamed when the recording's audio crackled to life one last time. "Come play tomorrow, Mark." Then static. Mark didn't sleep that night. By dawn, he'd convinced himself it was a prank. Some asshole kid with a projector and a sick sense of humor. He had to go back, to prove it to himself. The playground looked different in daylight. Less ominous. Almost peaceful. Mark approached the slide, running a hand along the weathered wood. "Nice try, Tommy," he muttered. Then the wood moved beneath his fingers, not rotting, breathing. The slide's opening warped, the darkness inside deepening impossibly. From its depths came a sound that stopped Mark's heart. Dozens of children laughing. A small, cold hand grabbed his wrist. The last thing Mark saw before being yanked into the darknesses was Tommy's face, his smile now wide enough to split his cheeks. "We caught you!" They found Mark's phone propped against the fence the next morning. The video showed 15 minutes of static before the camera tilted upward, revealing the slide's entrance. Something moved inside. Then the footage cut to Mark, now part of the rotting structure, his face embedded in the slide's wooden planks, his mouth stretched in a permanent scream. The audio whispered one final phrase. "Who's next?"